I am not Travis Scott, and I am not about to punch Andrew Zarian right in the eardrum, but we're live, pal. We're back to talk about one of the biggest, uh, from a publicity standpoint, when is the last time WWE has gotten so much out of one story, one moment?
I mean, Dwayne, you had Punk lose to Cena. You had Dwayne show up. You had Cody come out. Then you had Dwayne come out with Travis Scott. Then you had arguably the biggest heel turn since 1996. Wild stuff. I have to tell you, I cannot remember the last time I spoke so positively about a WWE pay-per-view, and they've had some really good ones. But, man, Garrett, that was some really good business.
I agree, even though I will say when it happened, I mean, because it's been rumored, right? When this storyline started, I think the first name that came to mind to folks was, what if Cena turned? What if we finally got the John Cena heel turn? And I was kind of negative on it because he is finally over as a babyface. Like, after all these years of just being constantly booed and having the 50-50 crowd, this version of John, he was getting 100% universal love from this current crowd. So I was like, let's use that. Like, let's keep that going, throughout the rest of the year. And instead, CM Punk would be tremendous in this role. However, for this moment, John Cena turning heel gets you more of what we just talked about than CM Punk does, even though I think CM Punk would do a much better job, as you saw the promo that he cut on Monday. So from a time and now perspective, the time is now. I thought it was extremely well done. How they get out of this, I think, is going to be really interesting, because I can't imagine John Cena stays heel throughout the whole year to say goodbye. Like, he's going to have to turn back babyface at some point, right?
I don't know. I mean, I guess at the end, I guess when is he done? The end of the year, or is he going like,
I think so,
January to January? Maybe he'll do a WrestleMania again.
What if he just loves it? Yeah, he just is like, I'm quitting Hollywood. I'm coming back to wrestling.
Well, I mean, he could love this because this is something he hasn't done in 20-something years. He hasn't been a bad guy in 20-something years. And honestly, that is really what elevated John Cena into getting the run that he did. He was able to be a tremendous heel. He was, at the time, he was cutting edge. You don't look at John Cena and say, oh, man, this guy is really with it with pop culture. But, at one point, he was really connecting to a young audience. I mean, now that young audience is all in their 30s, right? But
yeah,
which is crazy to think about, or late 20s, definitely in the 30s.
I
think this
I have a
was
signed
important.
John Cena CD.
You do?
I do.
Where'd you get it?
My friend used to work in wrestling. I honestly haven't talked to her in years and years and years. But she used to write for WCW magazine, and she did some stuff back in like the late 90s. And I guess she knew him in some way or had some connection to him. So she just went to like back, in the early 2000s when he was doing the character. And when the album came out, I think in like 2005, she just went and she got it signed for me and said, it's somewhere in here. I'd have to go find it. But yeah, I have a signed John Cena music CD.
Yeah, I would, I don't know. What do you think was his peak of popularity?
Well, let's see. I would like, for fandom, like for, that's so hard to say, because 2005 feels like kind of the peak of the character. But then when he wrestles The Rock in, what was that, 2012, I think, that was kind of the peak of the visibility of business for him. Yeah, that's an interesting one, because I think the problem is he was a little bit of, I think a lot of people think like he was kind of a Vince McMahon puppet in a way, where, the idea of the company was to be WWE and it wasn't influenced by the main superstar. Like WWE's rise in '98 is on the back of Steve Austin. But what happens when Steve Austin leaves? Well,
Yeah.
do you just lose popularity? So no, Vince wanted, really the name brand, which is kind of funny because that's what it is right now. It was never as strong as Vince McMahon's idea until he left and until now. But I sense that people kind of think that if he, like, his puppet character kind of helped drop the popularity overall of wrestling. It may have dropped anyways, and it probably was. So maybe he helped it not drop further. But the fact that he was so cookie cutter in his approach, which is what Vince liked, I think a lot of people blame like a lot of that run on that. But when in 2005, I was a giant John Cena fan, even though he was not a good wrestler. I really loved the idea of the character. I loved that he had a CD out. I loved that he rapped with Murs on a track. And it was kind of like the new, post Rock, post Austin, who's the guy, and he was there. And I just liked him as kind of the face more than I liked Triple H as the face. So I was very into John Cena in that time.
I never got into him. I got his purpose. Like, I got why people were into him. It just never resonated because I felt that it was such a shift. It really was a shift at the time from what we were brought up watching, and into this transitionary period of, the PG era. I feel like, what would be interesting if they didn't go PG, right? And they stayed what they were doing. And obviously that would almost be impossible because of the corporate sponsors and everything else that company evolved into. But what would that have been like for John if, they didn't essentially neuter that company as far as edginess went?
Yeah.
I don't know. His legacy might be different. Maybe it would be worse. Maybe it might be better. I don't know.
You know what's funny? Now that I'm thinking about it in this way, and this may be getting a little bit in the weeds. Shout out to Fightful. If you think about what John Cena was in the mid 2000s, again, and he was kind of Vince's chosen one to just kind of, keep the popularity and keep the PG-ness, and he's the face of the company. He was actually the corporate champion, right? He was the corporate face.
Yeah. Of course he was. He was always a corporate guy.
All the PR, seemingly, never said no. Make-A-Wish Foundation's like greatest celebrity. And so that was who he is. So when he turns to The Rock to become The Rock's corporate champion, I mean, he sort of always was the corporate champion. So what's the difference in the character other than now he has a mean face? So I don't know.
I'm looking forward to it, dude. I would say that is probably. Let's see how it plays out, right? I mean, there's so much comparison to Hogan in '96, and I'm being a little bit more conservative with this because I don't know how this will play out. If this turns into something mega, something humongous, then yeah, you would say it's Hogan '96 level. I can't believe they did this. But we'll see. I mean, I don't want this to turn into a quick swerve, but that's not how they book now. They book long term and they have ideas. And I'm dying for Dave to find out if this was always in the plans or this changed. Because really, if you think about it, right? That pay-per-view minus the Cena turn, I would say would have still been considered a fantastic pay-per-view.
That opening really good show. Really good show.
The opening women's match was probably the best elimination chamber that the women have had. That men's elimination chamber match, I've asked this question on multiple shows, and other than the first elimination chamber, and I think somebody said 2005. What other ones stand out? Because this is like a mega match, right? It should stand out. I don't think anything stood out as much as this one did compared to like the first two that I mentioned.
Star power wise, in the men's chamber was probably the biggest ever, I think.
Yeah, it was huge. But even if the show ended with him winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Cena wins exactly how he won. Punk comes out, maybe cuts a different promo, but says, "Hey, I'm going to come for you," because those two want to work and they're motivated to work together.
Yep.
How would we feel? I think we would be still saying that was a great pay-per-view. Now it's leading into Cody and Cena. That turn, though, added such a interesting level to this main event. Such an interesting level where it's no longer a John Cena match, right? Because some people have that internally. That, oh, yeah, it's John Cena. I know what I'm going to get. It'll be fine. It's another Cena main event at WrestleMania. But now it's a whole different conversation. They finally gave the audience what they had asked for 20 years ago.
Yes, you did. And it's something that he has been asked about forever, right? Since he retired. Oh, you never got the heel run. Was there ever an opportunity to do the heel run? He teased it in the Bray Wyatt video during the pandemic. So, he acknowledged it in that way.
Yeah.
And so, for him, I give him a lot of credit to do this because even though it is wrestling, there is still a legacy involved with his character and who he is as a person, who the public perceives him to be as a person. And now he's kind of okay with changing that. I think it is a little bit with a wink and a nod.
Yeah.
And, this is what we've seen as wrestling growing up. So you mentioned the Hogan turn. So I think most of the people who follow this as closely as we do understand this, but there's probably some younger folks. I saw this a lot online. I think there's two major differences to this and Hogan. So if you go back to 1993, when Hogan bails from WWE because Vince is trying to get away from him, there was the steroid thing in the early 90s, and then he's just kind of getting a little bit older, and Vince is trying to, he's trying to go younger. And at the same time, I'm sure Hogan, his value to their business was lessening, and he probably wanted even more money to stick around. And so when he leaves to WCW, it's like going to the territory and you're already the enemy. Like those hardcore WCW fans did not like it. However, he brought a bigger national fan base to WCW just by being there. And a lot of his WWF fans came over. So there was more attention, which brought along more business immediately. And WCW was under, they had more visibility in the pro wrestling world. And so by the time 96 came, he wasn't as valuable anymore. He was still the top person. And I went back to reread a lot of the 96 Observers because I covered that time period a couple years ago. And this dude is like Nitro, and he's like literally changing Nitro the day of, and they're scrambling to put a show together because he's got this fantastic contract and he can, his character, he has full direction of his character. But at the same time, he was really long in the tooth with that audience. And the thing that was actually working really well was Savage and Flair. So Hogan goes away, and I'm sure he thought by just going away, that business would drop, and it's actually not dropping. Like that program between Flair and Savage is doing really strong business. So when he actually does the Great American Bash at the Beach heel turn, while it was definitely a surprise, like if you were close to if you were as close in 96 as you are close to the business now, you would have had it all figured out about who was going to do the turn, right? But the thing about that turn was that it was business changing for a year and a half, 2 years. Like they were on fire.
Well, the business totally changed. I mean, comparing like pre-July 96 to like January 96, like it was a reset. WCW hit a reset more than anything else. This is not so much a reset, but when you're reading the 96 up there, so what were they doing? I'm trying to remember, and for whatever I can't remember at the time. prior to Hogan's NWO stuff, what program was he in for that year?
It was at the end of the Dungeon of Doom stuff.
That was that was late 95. Yeah.
Late 95. I'm almost sure that he pins Flair on TV like 3 times in the early Nitros, like in different tag matches and stuff. There was the Hogan and Savage in that Tower of Doom Terror whatever match where
the one with Pillman, right? That they wanted Pillman in.
Pillman opts out of, and they get Zeus in there as the Z Gangsta, and Jeep Swenson, I think, is in that match. So they do that craziness. Hogan, remember Hogan dresses in all black, and he was like a little bit of a preview to the heel stuff, and also in late 95 is the Observe This Brother thing with the World War III pay-per-view with Savage's arm hanging off of his shoulder and all that, and you know he's mad. They're mad at Dave because Dave has that information.
I showed that to my wife the other day because she kind of, I think she had like 2 glasses of wine and she was like, "Oh, wrestling, okay, I could what's going." And I was like, "Oh, you got to see this," and I like played it for her, that clip of throwing the Observer in the trash and then burning it. Okay, so I'm like, "Do you know what he's holding in his hand?" And she's like, "No, what?" I said, "A copy of the Wrestling Observer." And she's like, "Why is he angry at Dave?" I'm like, so Dave reported that Macho Man had hurt his arm, and they pretended it never happened. So to embarrass Dave, they denied it on the air, and then they burnt the issue. And she goes, "And then what happened?" I said, "Savage's arm was totally like off the bone." She was right. She was dying. She goes, "I can't believe they were that petty." I'm like, that's not even the pettiness.
Yeah.
It's not even the pettiness. So I'm looking at the pay-per-views for 96, okay? So in February, it was Hogan and the Giant in a steel cage, okay? Then it was uncensored, 96. So now we're in March. By the way, their business was doing pretty okay. They had 9,000 in attendance for this. So this was Hogan. Oh, this was it. Hogan and Savage defeated Ric Flair and Arn Anderson, Mang, Barbarian, Lex Luger, the Taskmaster, Z Gangsta, the Ultimate Solution with Woman, Miss Elizabeth, and Jimmy Hart. So essentially everybody. Everybody was there.
Just went through everybody.
Okay. Then you had Slamboree 96. Slamboree, Hogan, what did he do? Let's see. Let's go to the bottom.
Was he even on that show?
Oh, he was not on this. He was not on this. This was 16 matches, this card. Main event was a Giant versus Sting. 16 matches. And then you got the Great American Bash, which was it was the Giant and Lex Luger. Hogan's not here either.
Nope.
So I guess he took, I don't remember, did he take off from TV or just wasn't on the pay-per-views?
I think he just took like some months away. And then by Great American Bash, Hall and Nash are there, and they're doing the stuff with Bischoff where they're intimidating him and stuff. So I understand why, if you're going to compare it to something, that is the one to compare to, because that is the best one of our lifetime. But it's just the hard part for comparison is that the business is way different. And unless John Cena himself is going to be the top star in WWE for the next 2 years, it's a little bit of a different kind of thing. The other one that people are talking about is the Austin one and the Austin McMahon, which I don't think it is comparable to that one either. And what's funny is I was starting to see online how people were like celebrating the Austin heel turn. I was like, oh my gosh, like that was like the worst decision of all time.
Nobody celebrated. Nobody liked it. Nobody liked it at the time. It really killed it killed the territory.
It dropped all of their business. Like, yeah. So, we'll see what happens. And like you said, for that moment, for that time, for this next month and 2 weeks for Mania, it was the right thing to do. Post Mania, we'll see, because I think what your worry is, which is this going to be like a swerve, or is this going to be like a short thing and he's got to turn back? Like, that is my worry as well. And you remember Sergeant Slaughter, late 91, I think it was, after he'd done the whole Iraqi sympathizer gimmick, and that
after SummerSlam he turned.
And then remember his whole promo about, I want my country back. Like, what's Cena's "I want my country back" thing? Like,
I want my
that's
title.
well,
I want my
that's just
spinner.
like how could he get back in the good graces so quickly? Unless it is kind of like this wink, wink, nudge, nudge thing, and he was really trying to set the Rock up or whatever. I don't know how you do it, but that's the part that I'm super interested about, because I think from here to Mania, I don't think you can screw it up. I think it's going to be, even if it's not great, just the fact that they got so much buzz off of this angle, it's going to be loud, and it's going to be.
It really got buzz, and
Yeah.
I gauge these things outside of our bizarre bubble of hardcore wrestling fans. But when normal non-wrestling casuals are. It's like, what happened last night with John Cena? That's a big deal. Now, I have a question for you, okay? This is my question for everybody. So who's the third man?
Is it him putting the three fingers up? Is that why we think there's a third man involved?
I'm just doing it for my own selfish needs. Okay? This is for my own selfish fantasy booking. You know who I think should be the third man? CM Punk. CM Punk should be the third man. After cutting that promo on John, that could be the swerve, bro. And he's the third man.
I don't know. I think Cena and Punk is a giant match.
Cena and Punk is a giant match, but can you imagine the two-man power trip? Cena has the world title, beats Cody. They win the tag titles the following month at a pay-per-view. Then Punk gets the IC title, because I don't think he ever had the IC title, right?
I don't know. He
Did
had a lot
the
of
IC
titles.
title? I don't think so. So we'll talk about Raw, I'm sure. But he brought up
pull the ECW title out of the cobwebs, and he can start wearing that
and give it to him. Oh man, I thought it was fantastic, man. That was a really good WWE show.
Are you saying Travis Scott doesn't count? He's only like a half of a man? Like, what's going on? What's going on with Shooter Scott, man?
Shooter Scott. Why was he saging himself?
I think he was on. He was literally on another planet on Saturday night.
I want to know what he was taking, because I wouldn't mind consuming some of it. But he was saging himself. I bring a witch to my house every couple months to sage my house, because I'm losing my mind. They do San Paulo sticks. Have you done that? San Paulo sticks. I have a Dominican lady that shows up and does Santeria in my yard and buries chicken bones. I'm into all that weird stuff. I want to know what Travis was up to. I want to know.
Conan on his old podcast. Well, maybe he does it on the current podcast too. But when he used to do the MLW podcast with Court Bauer, he used to always say, whenever he would spark up, he would always say that he was going to Iran, and it was like some Iron Sheik joke that he had. Travis Scott was in Iran that night.
No, that dude was on Mars.
He was absolutely not inside the ring. I think he may have thought his body was levitating, and then they asked him to punch Cody Rhodes. My God. So what do you think? Like, they keep saying he's gonna wrestle, like he's training.
I mean, I think he needs a little bit more training, because he apparently allegedly popped Cody's eardrum. So I don't know what he's going to do. Maybe he'll interfere in something, if he's going to interfere in that match in Mania or something. I don't know if I want to see a Travis Scott match. Maybe we get Travis Scott and Bad Bunny.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, Drake, and bring Drake in, bring Kendrick. Just have a whole thing.
Bad Bunny and Travis Scott, yeah, those guys might literally injure each other for real if that was to happen.
Bad Bunny and Travis Scott?
But for a celebrity match, right?
Yeah.
Travis Scott on one side, Bad Bunny on the other side. That would be kind of fun. And it would get covered. That's the whole thing, right? Because Travis Scott just being involved gets them covered in spaces that wouldn't normally cover them. So I thought that was really smart. All right, so we'll talk a little. I actually want to ask you some questions about Raw, but first, is Matt Man back?
Matt is back on the Wrestling Observer. Now, we did our first one last week, and I didn't like how the show went, so I didn't post it. So this week's episode will be the return of Matt Men on the Observer. But, we do it weird, right? You know my deal with this? You guys embed my video.
Yes.
On the website. That's how we do it. So I just have to figure out with the new process, what we could do, we can't. But listen, I'm excited. I am, I tend to have a couple glasses of wine, and then I take a Travis Scott medication, and then I start essentially crying to my wife about how 16-year-old me recording the Observer on his Iowa boombox with a program that launched the Real Player at the time. I think it was 3 or 4 o'clock when Dave went on with Brian, and it would automatically record it on cassette. And I would go back home and I would listen to it on cassette. Okay, this was every freaking day. All right, I want people to know that. I think a lot of people assume like I'm like some oh, he's not a real wrestling fan. He's an influencer type. No, I really don't give a shit about influencing. I'm a radio guy. Like, I'm a fan of radio, and I've done radio, and that show changed my freaking life. Yeah. That single-handedly, that show with Dave and Brian, and I say this, I owe a lot to Dave and Brian because they sparked my interest with radio. I mean, it was obviously my 3 influences were Stern, Dave and Brian with Observer on IATA, and Leah Laporte with Tech TV and Twit. Those were my 3 major influences to do this. And if it wasn't for Dave and Brian, I probably would never have done it. And the fact that I get to be on here and talk about wrestling, and I've made great friends, essentially everybody at Observer, everybody's so amazing. This is a treat for me. Just doing this is enough for me. Financial reason, I don't care about the money. I do 10 other things, but this is a blast for me because I get to be on this platform and I get to talk to you when we can, obviously, because my day gig is so freaking demanding. Just to be able to carry, to host it on Sundays, the wrestling, and I tell my wife this all the time, and she's like, it's almost like you put this in the universe and you did it. I'm like, you know what it is? Sometimes when you don't give a shit enough, people kind of want you a little bit more, and I think that's what happened here. I never went to Tony or Dave or Brian. I was like, hey guys, I want to come on, but I want to be paid this or I want to do this. I was like, yeah, what do you want? What do you want from me? What do you want me to do? I'll do whatever. And that's where we're at right now. This is a lot of fun, and the fact that we're able to talk about even like the old stuff, Garrett. Like, I do so much wrestling stuff, but I never get to talk about old issues of the Observer with anybody because outside of you and a couple of people from the Observer, I don't know anybody that read it the way that we read that thing. And I still read it. I have I love those old Observers that are on Amazon because I go through it and I go, for everything that has changed in pro wrestling, nothing has changed. It's all the same. All the same stuff. The AEW hatred from people and the WWE hatred. We're back to 1997 with that the vitriol for companies, which I find silly, but nothing has changed. This has always been this.
No, I hear you. And from what I understand, Dave says there's more full Observer books coming out that we can look forward to. So
I can't wait.
See. I just want, because I went through all of 89 last year, and I think when I finished reading, because I just went week by week, and I went very close to the same time frame of, by December of last year, I was done with December of 89.
That's cool.
I want to say it was like 1,000 pages, over 1,000 pages in my Kindle app that I read through, but it was like over the whole year, so it's like I was reading.
Oh, you don't get the physical book; you actually get the Kindle one.
I get the Kindle version.
So
it's just
when the end of the world happens,
it's easier for me to take notes and grab stuff.
When that comet hits, when that asteroid hits, and all devices are gone, you're not going to be able to physically read the Wrestling Observers. I can in the hole that I'll be in.
No, I made a decision when I last moved. Well, 2 moves ago, because when I moved in with my wife, I was already sort of more minimalized than I was previously. but I got rid of a lot of physical media. I've rebought like some, I still have vinyl and I still have the 4K DVDs from a physical media standpoint, but most books,
Yeah.
I would say 90% of my books are through the Kindle app, but I still have some that are physical, but it's just a space thing. Like I was moving, every few years, and to try and pack up all your books, and it was just a big pain in the butt. But
I mean, all I have behind me are like Tchotchke's comic books and that's and the Observers. I mean,
I've sort of like I have my office and that's my space, and I get to keep all of my stuff in here. But that's sort of how I feel. If I get too much, it's like, okay, does it outgrow this office? If I'm outgrowing my office, then I have to get rid of some stuff because I have too much. Okay, so I mentioned the Mat Men thing because I saw that you had tweeted about it. So it's great. I was glad that happened. And I want to mention also, I know you're not going to Vegas. We've already done this whole thing. I just booked my flight. So I will be in Vegas Thursday through Monday. And I wanted to remind folks, if you have not decided yet and you're still on the fence, f4wonline.com/Vegas. So I will be at the Dave and Brian meet and greet. I will probably be helping out in some way. So I will be there. After party night 1. Now, it depends. If WWE credentials me for night 1 of WrestleMania, I will not be at the live viewing. I think because people are getting together to watch, to do the wrestling party, but I still will be at the after party.
Did you reach out to WWE? Because I gave the contact info for Brian, because Brian, I was trying to get Brian the media credential, and they haven't responded yet. So
I think they gave a deadline of like mid-March when they're going to let everybody know.
Okay.
And like to me, I'm like, I don't even need to go to the press conference. Like, I'm not into the clown show aspect of it. Yeah, I get enough clown show in normal wrestling. So I don't even want to go. I don't know how I could necessarily say that, or if it helps my cause or not. But
don't say that. Don't say that.
The only reason I want to go to get credentialed is I'm just interested in the process of how they handle this stuff. Like WWE is such a giant company, TKO. Like, this is a big event, their biggest event of the year. Even having journalists or media being interested, this is the biggest time for that. So I want to see that process and sort of cover the event based on the people covering the event. Like, that's where my sort of interest is. But I mean, I'm not all that interested in going to the post press conference, and I don't even need to go to Sunday. Like, I only opted for Saturday. So I will be at the wrestling, whatever parties or whatever we're hanging out at for Sunday. And I will also be at the Texas Day Brazil dinner, which is the 19th, or it's actually a lunch, which is the 19th.
That place is fantastic.
And then the Wicked Spoon brunch, which is actually my favorite.
Another great spot.
My favorite meal at the Wicked Spoon. So I will be at all that stuff. And if you are all going, it is a blast. I always say this, the convention is a blast. I've made so many friends historically from going, and you just make so many cool connections and people. And that's another thing. I want to get out there and network and hang out and chat with people who are interested in this stuff and do all that, because I don't think I'm going to New Orleans next year. Vegas makes it a lot easier for me. I'm not sure about New Orleans. So, all right.
Are you coming for SummerSlam? Is anybody doing a trip for SummerSlam?
Where is SummerSlam this year? Minnesota?
No,
or is it in New York?
2025 is is it? Yeah, it's here. It's here. It's a 2-night. Remember, it's the first 2-night SummerSlam, and it's funny because guess how they're billing it? They're not billing it as New York. They're billing it as New Jersey.
Oh, because of where the stadium is.
Well, they've always billed it as New York, even though it's in Jersey. MetLife, the Giants and the Jets don't play in New York. They play in New Jersey, which is it's a hellhole to go there. I despise the Meadowlands. So
you're not
it's
selling
a 2-night
me on
thing.
this, man.
I was just asking. I don't even think I'm going.
Yeah, these wrestling trips, I will do the Vegas thing because AEW is not running Vegas this year for Double or Nothing. They're running
Yeah.
Glendale, I guess, in Arizona. So I'm not going to go to Vegas. I did want to. I did want to go to All In in Texas, but I have a prior commitment, so I will not make that show. So that's why it made even more sense for me to make sure to go to Mania, just because I was going to miss the other ones. But yeah, it's just easier for me because I live pretty close by, and flights were really affordable. Because I was even thinking about driving, because I was like, I haven't done a road trip in a while. I'll drive, and then I looked at flights, and I was like, oh no, it makes so much more sense to fly. I expected flights to be like 3 times as much as I paid, but no, I guess it's just because of this weekend. Like it's no one's really going into Vegas on Easter weekend except for wrestling fans, I guess.
No, weird weekend that they booked.
Yeah. And I think that's why they wanted them, right? Vegas wanted them for this weekend for that very reason.
I guess so. I mean, they'll still, I guess, a lot of people aren't going to celebrate Easter with their families. So, they're going. There's no way I could go.
So we'll save some Revolution thoughts for the end here, but I had some other questions for you based off of where we're going with WrestleMania. And so the Elimination Chamber, Bianca, I was so happy when Bianca won because I immediately was like, Bianca and Rhea, that's a dream match on the WrestleMania stage. I can't wait. And then Io on Monday was like, hold my beer because I'm going to win this match and I'm going to throw all of your dreams of Rhea versus Bianca. I'm putting those on pause, and I'm joining this fray. What did you think of Io beating Rhea on Raw to win the women's title?
Nice surprise. It was a really nice surprise. I thought they did a good job. They made it very interesting because now you're like, what's going on here with that main event? Surprises. A lot of surprises the last few days. Now, I don't know if this is a booking change, a philosophy change, or it's that we're in Mania season, so you gotta up the ante. You got to make this as important as possible. I thought from beginning to end, I thought they did a great job with that show. Some lull periods, obviously, but overall, it started really strong and it ended really strong. Fantastic.
I was disappointed that there was no Rock or no Cena on Monday. And let me preface this by saying I've been similarly critical when AEW runs a great match or angle coming out of the pay-per-view, and then you want to see the follow-up on Wednesday, and then they don't have a follow-up. I'm similarly critical when AEW does that. So I was kind of disappointed. I thought Cena,
but maybe
Rock,
maybe on Friday. Maybe we get it on Friday.
Well, Cody will do it on Friday, but it's almost like, to me, they knew that the heat coming out of the show was going to be enough to get people to tune in, and they didn't need the Cena Rock thing. But still, I just think if you want to make this thing bigger than life, and I know what the excuses are going to be. Oh, Cena wasn't in town and Rock wasn't in town. They're busy. Right. But if you're going to pull the trigger on it, like, you need these guys around. So that is half of it. And so I don't like that excuse necessarily, but I want to see how this fan base reacts to John Cena, the heel. Are they going to pretend boo him to play along, or is there going to be real heat? Because that is another difference in '96, right? That is why Hogan got the real heat, is because those WCW fans, that's who they thought he was all along. And then you add into the fact that he's dropping 25 legs on Macho Man, and they were throwing stuff at the dude. I don't think wrestling sort of allows for that real heat like that anymore. But it's also possible that John Cena gets cheered for this move because, like you said, they've been wanting it. Fans have been wanting it for so long.
I don't know. I'm curious. I don't know if it's going to go that way. Listen, I really think it's going to be easy for him to kind of turn the audience, right? He could turn them quickly. I think people, you know what? I'm gonna say I think people really want to boo him at this point, and they're going to be able to boo him. So I'm not as concerned. It's not like Austin where he turned and nobody wanted to boo him. Like nobody wanted to boo Austin.
I mean, they had Austin get color on Jim Ross for heat,
And it didn't work. No, it didn't work.
You know, they're probably going to have Cena get color on Ron Killings, right? On R-Truth.
Oh my gosh, he's going to have to murder him.
Yeah.
But you know what I'm more curious about, okay? Is Cena going to grow out the beard? Is Cena going to dress in all black? You cannot wear those goofy jorts anymore.
No.
It's gone. You got to get rid of the jorts. And I don't want it to be like a pair of like black jorts. You know, he needs to start dressing differently. I don't know. Put on black trunks and that's it. And knee pads. That's all he needs.
Maybe he does the same Versace vest that The Rock's been wearing.
Can you imagine? He's just dressing up like a Cuban nightclub owner in Miami.
Like Razor Ramon gear. Like just go back and watch 92, 93, or 93, 94 Ramon tapes.
That's fantastic.
I think it's a great question, and I'm very interested as well. But you know, I also don't want to see him come out in the suits that he kind of wears, you know, on the red carpet and stuff. Those plaid suits, you know, because that's also happy-go-lucky, fun John Cena, serious John Cena. Like he does need to kind of lean in, and we'll see. I don't know. There's a lot of questions that we need to be answered, which is why we're going to keep tuning in on Monday night.
Very cool stuff. Very cool.
All right. I guess we can move on to Revolution, AEW's big pay-per-view this weekend. It is on Sunday. I've been so happy for these Saturday pay-per-views because then it allows for Sunday to just kind of hang with the family, but we're back to Sunday this weekend. It is in LA. I am not going to LA for this show.
How far are you from LA?
It's not that close. It's like probably like a 7-hour drive or something.
Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say if it's like 2 hours,
close
maybe,
flight,
you know,
close flight.
Yeah. 45 minutes.
And I would love to see Denise, but otherwise, like, yeah, I'm already going to Mania, so there's no way. But what is your interest in this show as we are here, you know, about 5 days away from it?
It looks fantastic. What a great card. What a great card. Now, you're going to get great wrestling matches, but the big question is who takes the title? Do they put it on Cope? Is this time for Cope? Everything else looks fantastic. I have no complaints. Like, you look at the card, you cannot complain about this card.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Like, I'm looking at 0 hour. You got Big Boom AJ on there, so automatically, you know, it's a 5-star classic. You know, I'm curious what they're going to do with those Costco guys. I want to see, you know what I want to see? I want to see Gabe Kidd against Big Boom AJ. That's the match I want.
Just get killed. He just gets killed.
Beat the shit out of him. Yeah, I wanted to beat the shit out of him in front of his son. You know,
shoves
fantastic.
A giant chocolate chip cookie down his throat as he's
yeah. But look at this card. I mean, dude, you got that on 0 hour. People will get into it. It'll be fun for them. You have Swerve and Ricochet, and they've been telling that story really well. You know, a lot of people were concerned about Ricochet and if he was going to rehab himself in AEW because he was going back and forth on Twitter. People didn't know where he would fall. He fell in a really major position with Swerve, and it's working. It's a captivating story. Then you got Hangman and MJF, and Hangman is on fire right now. You got the Outrunners and the Hurt Syndicate, which I assume the Hurt Syndicate's going to murder them.
Yeah.
Mercedes and Momo Watanabe, another fantastic, you know, you're going to get a great match. And then look at the top. You got Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay in a steel cage. You got Kenny Omega and Takeshita for the international title. You got the AEW women's match in a Hollywood ending match. Now, if they don't do the Hollywood the backlot brawl and Goldust with Dustin to show up, I'm going to be so mad. I'm going to be so upset. They got to do something with Dustin here. And then you got the World Championship. So, and listen, you know who's not on this card? Where's Okada?
He was in Oakland just the other day. Now that's a closer drive, and I decided to not go to Oakland because Elimination Chamber was on at the same time. But he was in Oakland.
I think. Yeah, but
So
why
maybe-
isn't he on this?
Maybe they add him against
imagine they
Brody.
Yeah, why not? Do it. Do it. I mean, listen, you need to do everything you can right now, and they're doing it. I mean, this card looks great. This is a solid show.
Well, they are probably 2 or 3 0-hour matches short. Okada's not going to be on the 0 hour.
Yeah.
So, they have 8 matches right now on the show. I could see them adding one more to get him on there. Or maybe he's in an angle in some way with the Takeshita and Kenny Omega. I don't know. I don't know how else you would add him to this. Okay, so here's the real
stuff. Also, you got Big Bill. There's a lot of moving parts, but it actually, I'm sorry I cut you off, but that's actually a positive sign, right? That there are key people that are not on the card because they're so full. That's a good problem to have. Or maybe not.
Yeah, 100%. No, it's 100%. But this has never been their flaw, right? This is their strength, which is the ability to fill out a card with really, really good wrestling matches. Now, I think the fault of this card, and this is the fault of the promotion for the last couple months, if you were to rank all of the matches in order of which matches you really, really wanted to see, and then the ones that you're like, those are kind of on the bottom. The world title is not on top.
It is not on top. No.
The world title, because I was looking at this. So, Takeshita Omega, yes, absolutely 100%. Can't wait to watch that match. Swerve and Ricochet, love to see where they go. Hangman and MJF, of course, it's going to be amazing. Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher, we don't really need the cage, but somebody wants to do something crazy off the top. So those are 4 marquee matches. And then if you like this Tony Storm and Mariah May feud, there's another one. I will say, I'm sure Mercedes and Momo Watanabe is going to be a really good match. I don't even know what the build is other than Mercedes wants to wrestle her. So I'm not that into that, but even then, it's kind of in the middle for me. Where does Moxley and Copeland fit? It sure as hell fits after the first 4 that I mentioned, for sure.
Yeah. Where does Moxley? I would say, okay, so this is how I'm ranking it, right? Kenny Omega, Takeshita. That I want to see that first. Hangman and MJF. And again, these are so... I want to see all of them. If I have to rank this, how I'm ranking it. Hangman and MJF. Then I'm going Will Ospreay, Kyle Fletcher. And then I'm going World Championship.
Right? And it's not like they're doing anything wrong with that feud. They're trying really, really hard to make that thing interesting. You know what the problem is to me? We've seen this version of Adam Copeland's character in WWE before. So it feels a lot like a rehash to me. It just seems like he's playing the hits a little bit as an older wrestler. And so I'm like, yeah, great. I've seen this before. What's next? And I guess that's what I'm waiting for. Is like, where do they go from here?
For the Cope stuff?
No, just for Moxley and the world title. Like,
for Moxley.
Unless Copeland wins the world title.
But there's also the Christian element. There's also the Christian element here. And what I do not want to see is Cope winning it, Adam Copeland winning the title, and then them pulling this like facade where, oh, look, Christian cashes in.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I feel like that's such a cheap way out of there. Also, that Christian stuff, if you ask me, I think they did it totally backwards. They should have had these guys team up first. They should have welcomed him in, and they should have teamed them, and then Christian could have turned on him, and you would have had an interesting program between the two. They had, they just didn't go in that direction. I don't know what you do with Moxley. Maybe you know, I don't know. And I really I like him, but I don't think this angle, whatever the plan for this was, I don't believe it executed the way they had initially thought. Whether or not somebody was coming in, or they had a different plan and somebody got hurt, or they pivoted for a different program, I don't know what it is, but there's a key piece missing from this Jon Moxley Adam Copeland feud. That whole stable, there's something missing.
I think the thing that, and I may be being a little bit unfair, but this one, there's no win with this scenario for me because I don't think Copeland is a viable challenger, so I don't want to see him win. But at the same time, it feels like we should be near the end of the Death Riders, and we should have this story resolved. But then if that means Copeland winning, then I'm also unhappy in that way. So this match is not going to make me happy in any way because I just want it to be moved on.
Here's a question for you, okay? So we have a number one contenders match with Swerve and Ricochet for the world title, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Swerve wins. Let's say Swerve wins.
Yes.
Is it going to be, I mean, do you want to see Swerve and Copeland, or do you want to see Moxley and Swerve?
I don't know. I don't really want to see either, which again, this is why this is like a no-win proposition for me. And now if this was a different version of Jon Moxley, if this was not the Death Riders version of Jon Moxley, yes, I would love to see Swerve and Moxley. But as the Death Riders version of Jon Moxley, as the what's the New Japan faction, House of Torture, the House of Torture version of Jon Moxley, I'm just not as interested because I don't like the way that they get heat on this stuff. It's old, it's overplayed, they do it too much, it's not fresh. So I'm just sort of over the whole thing. But look, if it was Jon Moxley, as a previous version of himself versus Swerve, I would definitely be into that match. And I'm sure Copeland and Swerve would have a really good match too. For the highest stakes, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I think
unless there's another piece to this that we don't know.
Sure. 100%.
And what worries me a little bit, what worries me is that I generally hear things, right? And I
people
generally
like to tell you stuff.
People love to tell me things because at times I'm a Volt, and at other times I'm a total fucking Yenta, and I want to tell everybody. So, and there's been so much that has been said to me, and if anybody says please don't mention this, I never mention it. I have not heard. I've heard some things, but I have not heard but just wait.
Right.
I have not heard that, and that worries me a little bit. But I'm also not seeking this stuff as aggressively as I was over the last couple of weeks. So I'm hoping that there is some sort of resolution to this at Revolution. I'm curious to see if they do some sort of move here. I don't know what it would be, but you're gonna have to remember the last thing people remember is the main event. You could have a fantastic show, and we learned this from WCW. They would have a card with top to bottom unbelievable matches except for the main event, and then that's all people would talk about. This Hogan should not happen here. Hogan and Piper with his broken hip. Yeah, the hip story, remember? The hip.
Yeah. Yeah, oh yeah. That's right in 97, man. That is a big storyline for 97. Okay, so here's the thing that I'm actually going to give AEW the benefit of the doubt and actually praise them for when it comes to the way that this card looks. One of the reasons that we've stated why WWE has been so hot is because their men's main event scene is strong. They have like 6 or 7 guys who are over with the crowd and who fans could see as being a title contender. Like there's we just talked about that men's elimination chamber, how strong the star power was. And if you look at this card, you can see that because I mentioned all those matches, they have up-leveled Ricochet. Now, a lot of people still don't like the wrestling style because they think he's just wrestling like he was as a babyface. I think he's kind of dialed it back a little bit. But yeah, the way that he's going to win a match is by his athleticism, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
I would love to see him cheat a little bit more to be a heel. But okay, Ricochet's up leveled. He and Swerve are for the number one contender spot. So those guys are near the top of the card.
Yeah.
MJF and Hangman right at the top of the card. Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher. Ospreay is their top babyface. Kyle Fletcher is the young up and coming heel who's kind of cemented his status. Konosuke Takeshita. He's I don't know if he'll ever get to that tippy top because of the fact that, you know, Callis kind of has to cut the promos for him. But then you got Kenny Omega, the most beloved babyface in the company. So there's 8 wrestlers right there atop the division in on the men's side.
Yeah.
And so you would think, okay, who comes out, Moxley or Cope? And then one of those 8, you know, you should be excited to see them possibly win the championship. I just think that the person who is the champion, you know, this is not Ric Flair in, you know, in the mid 80s, right? This is a House of Torture John Moxley and a grit enabled Adam Copeland who for some reason wants to have the word edge on all of his t-shirts. So that is the disconnect for me. I like the top of the card with all those guys that I mentioned, and then I don't like the 2 guys in the championship match. So once we get away from that, I think we're going to have this nice top of the card scene for the men, and it's going to be really interesting because Tony Khan likes these long reigns, right? Like if you remember, you know, in previous iterations of when WWE was hot, sometimes they would ping pong the championship back and forth just because.
And I'm a fan of that. At
so many
at the
top
right
guys.
time, you should. At the right time, you should. You should be able to ping pong it. Now, but here's where it also gets a little messy, right? We got to look out to July because that's their big show, and a lot of their momentum will be riding on the success of that show in July. At All In. Right now, I don't know. They have how many tickets sold? 16,000, 15,000. I don't even know at this point.
Is it even that high right now?
It may not be. I think it's set for I think it's set for 18,000 right now. And if that's the case, then why aren't you just running a building, you know?
Yeah. I mean, they got to believe that they can get over 20.
I guess I guess they can believe that they could get over 20. I hope so. But what is the main event of that show? Kenny Omega and Okada? That's not for the world title.
Yeah, it'll be
that
one
may
of
be
the
a
big
unification
matches.
or something. That'll definitely. I mean, that's the big match. But what are you doing with the world title? Who's going to be the champion going in, and who's the number one contender? We have a little way to go, but they got to start piecing those little things here and there. I mean, who do you want to see in the world title? That's a great question for you, and even the chat room right now. We got a couple hundred people here. What do you want to see for the world title as the main event at that show at All In? Fascinating. That's not a discussion that's happening.
Yeah, because people are just there's a sense of predictability in wrestling because you want the fans to kind of feel like they sort of think what's going to happen so that they can, if they're fans of it, then they're like really excited to see it possibly happen. But at the same time, you don't want too much predictability because you want some freedom there in making some decisions. But I don't know what that main event is. And I think I don't even know if whomever wins at Revolution, which I think it's going to be Moxley, but I'm not 100% sure. I don't even know if once Moxley wins or once Copeland wins, we'll even know by then. Because I have a feeling, we have Dynasty still. By the way, Dynasty's only at 4,000 tickets sold. All In is right under 12. Dynasty's in Philly.
And when's the date?
It is in April. I don't know the exact date. but it's in April. And then Double or Nothing, I think tickets just went on sale for Double or Nothing just recently. So I don't know what that number is, but the all in show is just under 12. There's 11,000 something. That's the last thing that WrestleTix had for all
but
in.
when with a show like that, and this is my philosophy, okay? This is just how I see things. With a show like that, the last moment of that show, the last couple has to be your top guys.
Mm-hmm.
It cannot be, and especially the importance of the success of that show. It can't be, just a really well-liked guy with another really well-liked guy for the world championship, and it ends on a happy moment because the right guy won. It has to be mega. It has to be big.
Ospreay beating Moxley for the title? Is that where you
could be
pull the trigger on Ospreay?
Is Ospreay the top guy in the company? Is he the number one guy in that company?
I think he's the top baby face, and Omega is kind of the people's baby face. But if Omega's going to be facing Okada, then that's probably you take Kenny out of that world title picture because of that.
Yeah, and I don't like that. You want to hit a reset. You want to have a WrestleMania moment in that collision, and that Dynamite should be the day after WrestleMania. I know there's so much things that go into play here, booking and politics and programming for the longevity of the stories, but here's your chance to do something groundbreaking. You're coming here for this show. You are in a major big building. You have to make this feel bigger than ever. It cannot just be an AEW show in a big building. It has to be bigger than ever and has to lead into something. I'm hoping, and again, I absolutely love AEW. It is the best wrestling consistently since it started. I don't think there's been another promotion that has had a consistently positive pay-per-view run like they have. I can't even tell you the last time I thought it was a bad show. Their Dynamites are really solid. I really enjoy Collision week after week because it's really good wrestling. You need to make it feel larger than life. And here's your chance. I don't know if it's going to be Mox. If it is Mox and Will, and they make Will into the guy, that's great. But I think you need a little bit more juice on that show.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, we're months away. We're in July. Anything could happen. Bill Goldberg could come and challenge Moxley for the title and win it in Texas.
Yeah. Last thing, and we'll get out of here. The word of Phoenix being a free agent. How soon do you think until he shows up with Penta in WWE? And there's this Chad Gable Lucha Underground storyline that they're doing.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny. Chad Gable's amazing. Like, he's just so entertaining. How would you bring in Penta? Like, would you bring him in immediately, or would you kind of do the WrestleMania thing, or maybe the Raw after WrestleMania? Like, how would you do it?
I would 100% bring him in. Bring him in now. And you do, and that's a WrestleMania tag match. Him and his brother versus Chad and whoever. You bring him in. I mean, listen, they do a beatdown on him. Nobody's coming out. He says, "I'm the king of the luchadors. I beat all the best ones." Blah blah blah. And here comes Phoenix. Great, easy.
Yep.
Nothing crazy.
That's another one that people are just going to be anticipating every time Penta is on stage in the ring. And there's any sort of turbulence, the fans are going to immediately look to the back and wonder if Phoenix is going to come in and save them.
That's great. I hope they make a lot of money there.
Yeah,
I hope they have a great career and they make a ton of money and it works out for them because they're both super talented and they did everything that they could have in AEW, really. Mm-hmm. Unless they were going to put the world title on Penta, which I didn't see happening.
No.
They achieved everything. They were a fantastic tag team in the early years. They did amazing business. We were there for one of their best matches.
Yeah,
at All Out
2021.
All Out.
Or All Out 2021. Yeah.
Yeah. So good for them. And I want them to be successful. I think it's fantastic. but they're a good commodity to have, and you can see that WWE's building that tag division up a little bit with the War Raiders and DIY and Motor City Machine Guns, and now you have Penta and Phoenix as a tag team. That'll be fine.
Yep. All right. That was a good one. Glad we were able to get together this week.
Me too.
I saw Pro Wrestling Joker. We didn't shout out his.
Oh man, what did he write?
His little super chat. He just said he wrote something kind words towards you.
Thank you. I'm not used to the kind words. I appreciate it. He's always here. He's great.
Oh yeah, I love. He and I share lots of Twitter DMs based off of, because we have differences in opinion in wrestling a lot. So I like having a conversation with him because it kind of, when you have to back up your reasons, I think you're sharper, and it helps me for these shows that I do great. When I can talk things through, and Joker's one of those guys. All right. So for Andrew, thanks to producer John, I am Double G. We'll see you when we see you. Peace out.